Hello everyone, welcome to my online physics classes. So today we are going to cover the topic pseudo force, which is part of your Newton's laws of motion chapter, which is part of your I think 11th standard curriculum. So I chose this topic because I think many students find it difficult to understand the concepts of pseudo force. Where is it applied? How to tackle it? How to draw free body diagrams with a pseudo force, and where you should be drawing them, and also in addition how pseudo force is relevant in real life, how it causes problems, and we'll see how we can be prepared and tackle the pseudo force in real life. Sorry. Okay, so let's begin. uh, let's start by a daily example. So imagine that when you are inside a bus and the bus is moving, and the bus brakes. So if you are standing inside the bus, so I mean you are not very rigidly attached to the bus. So then what happens, we all have experienced this, that we tend to we feel that there is an invisible force that is trying to drag us forward if we are standing and the bus brakes. So what happens here? I mean, there is basically there is no force. Nobody applied a force on you. Nobody pushed you, or you also didn't want to move by yourself. But still, I mean, you feel a force. That's why you tend to move forward. So this force, because it does not exist, or it is invisible, and it is experienced only in certain cases, so that is it is not a real force. So that is why this force is called a pseudo force. So yeah, I prepared this example, funny example actually. So here what happens is, I mean, an example of a pseudo force. So here the guy gets on a bus and he is standing inside the bus, and the bus brakes. So I mean, it is not his intention to fall over that girl, but he does, and it is very embarrassing for not only the guy but for the girl also. So, and again, I mean, it happens repeatedly, and things get even more embarrassing for the guy, and the girl slaps him. So, and there are some curse words being used as well. So so in real lives, actually, uh, so yeah, I mean, the guy did not intend to fall over that girl, but at least as what it is shown in the video, that the girl also later falls because of the same experience onto the guy, and the guy slaps her back, and then gets out of the bus. But yeah, I mean, so this is basically an example of a real life pseudo force, where I mean, unintentionally, of nobody's fault, if an invisible force is applied on a person who is not very rigidly attached to the bus, or in general some cases that I'll later show you. So basically this is an actual problem that we all must be aware of, and something that we must know how to solve it, and be prepared for it. So if you know how it works, then there is a chance that we can solve this problem for us. So we'll see basically how it works, where is it applied, and how we are going to tackle problems um, in JEE or WBJE or NEET or any other exams that you are appearing in which has a physics component. So let's move. So to understand this force, what the pseudo force is, we need to revise some of the previous concepts. I believe most of you are aware of these concepts, but let's revise them. And who do not know or kind of forgot about them, then they will also get a chance to memorize them back. So velocity, as you all might know, that velocity is a vector quantity, and by vector quantity we mean that a quantity must have both magnitude and the direction. So so basically uh, and also there is the other thing that a vector quantity should obey the parallelogram law when being added with another quantity, but we are not adding two quantities here, so we are just considering only one quantity. So for that quantity to be constant, so for velocity to be constant, for example, so if a vector quantity is constant, then it has to be constant in both magnitude and direction. So so let's for example, we can see here that in the object here, it is moving with a constant velocity of 5 meter per second across time, and it is in the same direction, it is moving in the same direction. So then we can term that the object is moving at a constant velocity. But for example, if we see that the object was changing the magnitude of the velocity, suppose, then in this case the velocity is not constant, and it is not a constant velocity. Again, I mean, if the object was moving with the same magnitude, but it kept on changing direction over time, suppose, even if the magnitude is constant, but the direction is not constant, so that's why over time, so that's why this velocity is not a constant velocity. So in both these two cases, last two cases, uh, and we all know that whenever the velocity is not constant, then there is an acceleration that is applied on it. uh, I think you all remember it. So in both these cases, we have an acceleration in place. So an acceleration is required to change a velocity, and by velocity it means change can be by means of either magnitude or direction or both. So let's move on. So let's discuss this concept of inertia. Inertia is basically the tendency of an object to keep moving with a constant velocity. So this is a term which is derived from Newton's first law of motion, which is also known as the inertial law. So that basically says that if an object is moving with a constant velocity, I mean, if an object, I mean, regardless of moving with a constant velocity or not, but if there is no force applied on a body, no external force is applied on a body. So if there is a body and there are external forces applied on it, I'm considering all the forces on it applied together on it is equal to 0, then basically the body will, if a body was in rest originally, then it will continue to be at rest. And if it was moving with a constant velocity, it was moving with a velocity, whatever velocity it was, it will continue to move with that same velocity over time. So if equal to 0, then vt1 is equal to vt2 equal to vt3, unless and until up to the point there is no force applied. So I'm assuming that from T1 to T3, there is no force applied on the body, on the object, or no external force is applied on the object. There are cases of internal forces as well, but an internal force cannot make an object move. I mean, we'll see how such scenarios exist. It is not very necessary here. So the law is basically whenever there is no external force, the object will maintain its velocity. So that is inertia. So basically, so that's why whenever there is an inertia, the object tends to move with a constant velocity. So basically, so we see the same examples here again. So if the object was moving with a constant velocity, then the inertia applies on that object, and so that's why that means that there is no acceleration. So no velocity, no change in velocity means there is no acceleration. So that's why this object is called inertial object. And in the last two cases that we explored, that we saw in the last previous slides, that when the velocity changes either by magnitude or by direction or by both, then there is an acceleration acceleration basically applied on that object, and that object, so that whenever there is an acceleration, whenever there is an object that moves with an acceleration, that object is called a non-inertial object. So in both cases it is termed as a non-inertial object. Okay, so now let's consider force. Sorry. So if you consider all forces that you encounter in real life, I'm actually moving this. This is quite distracting. So if you consider all kinds of forces that are there, that exist in the world, or that you have to deal with when you are solving problems, all of them can be divided into two categories. One of them is applied, and the other one is resistive forces. So applied forces are can either be natural or it can be generated. So applied forces are basically, so suppose this is an object based on a surface. So natural forces are, the example of natural forces is gravitational force. So gravitational force is always acts downwards. I mean perpendicular to the surface, not perpendicular to the surface, but always pointing downwards. So basically it points to the center of the earth, and whenever an object is placed on the surface of the earth, suppose this is the earth surface. So if you consider this is the earth surface, and so the tangent is basically like this, then it always, whenever you keep the object on the earth surface, suppose here, then always it will point towards the earth center. So that's why mg is always drawn downwards. I mean to any cases. So this is one example of applied forces and of general natural forces. So there are other examples. For example, you consider electrostatic force or electromagnetic force or nuclear force. So there are basically these four kinds of natural forces in our world that exists. So you might be already aware of it, and but any force, whichever is there in the world, they all have the same dimension or same unit. So basically all of them are expressed in newtons, or if you are aware of the dimensions, then force has this dimension mL/2. So whenever there is you hear the term force, then it has the same dimension and the same unit. So this natural, the force can either be natural, like the four kinds that we mentioned. Here only gravitational force applies, because the other ones are not applicable here. And either it is natural, or it can be generated, like generated by you. Suppose you are pushing the object or pulling it, or by means of some kind of generator, or by means of some kind of mechanism, you are generating this force. So all these forces come under this generated category. So basically, so applied forces, our examples are this applied force or gravitational force. And the other kind of force is resistive forces. So resistive forces, they only come into the picture only when there is an applied force. So you may link it with the Newton's third law, not completely, because it only applies to the applied force and reaction force. So every force has an equal and opposite reaction that you might encounter. But the key is basically, until and unless there is an applied force, there is no resistive force. So that's why whenever you draw a free body diagram, whenever you want to draw a free body diagram, always, so the rule is always first draw the applied forces. So always first draw the applied forces, analyze it a bit, and then only draw the resistive forces. So now we'll see what resistive forces basically mean. So resistive forces examples are the reaction by this earth surface. So when you place an object, you see that the object is not going downwards, right? So this gravitational force is not taking it downwards. on most of the solid surfaces, unless suppose, I mean, it is a muddy surface, or suppose it's a liquid surface, then what happens is this reaction force is not sufficient to basically compensate for this gravitational force. So any resistive force basically on any surface, or any kind of resistive forces, so all resistive forces, they have a maximum value. So you can say it R max. So for reaction force is a example of resistive force, so it also has a maximum value, and the maximum value of resistive force like reaction force for a solid surface is quite high. So that's why whenever you place an object like an almirah, or any other object like football, or whenever you are standing on a solid surface, you don't go down, unless it is like a liquid surface or a muddy surface, because the reaction force R max value is very high, so it tends to basically infinity. I mean, or I mean, that is a kind of vague term, because I mean, if there is an object which is heavy enough, it may still be able to, I mean, go down. But yeah, the key thing is to remember that all the resistive forces has a maximum value anywhere. So that is one of the resistive forces. And then another resistive force that we all know, that is a frictional force. And frictional force always acts parallel to the tangent drawn at the contact point to the surface. So this is the contact point, and here if we draw a tangent, basically the tangent here is basically the same as this straight line. So this is the tangential direction of the over the surface at this contact point. So the frictional force always applies along the direction of the tangent on a surface, and it always acts, the frictional force always acts opposite to the relative motion, direction of the relative motion. So if this object tends to move this in this direction, because there is a force applied here, so obviously the object will tend to move in this direction. So the relative motion of this object on this surface is along in this direction. So the friction on this surface for this object will be applied in this direction. So if you free the body from the surface, then basically these are the forces that are applied on it. So one is the reaction force. Pardon my drawing, it goes perpendicular to the surface. So basically frictional force acts tangential, and reaction force acts normal to the surface at the contact point. So these are all contact forces. Okay, so if there is no contact, then these forces are not present. So reaction and friction both are contact forces. So basically, if again you don't do the mistake that I did, always draw the applied forces first, or we can draw it here, or we can draw it here for simplification. It both are same. So this is the free body diagram basically, when you are drawing such kind of objects, and so such kind of experience such kind of things. And the frictional force, so you have to remember this line whenever you are tackling friction, that frictional force always acts opposite to the direction of relative motion. So whenever there are, suppose so we all, at least I used to face problems whenever you put one object on top of it, and then again one on top of that, and then you say that there is a force applied on one of it, and you want to draw the free body diagram of each, and you don't know which direction the frictional force should be drawn. So if you free the first body, then there is obviously this force, there is obviously mg in this direction, there is obviously the reaction force that is given by the this surface, and also now we have to determine what is the relative motion of this body in this contact surface. So basically, because the force is applied on this body, there is no way that the relative motion can be in this direction. So the relative motion has to be in this direction. So that's why the frictional force on this surface applies in this direction. So that is the frictional force on the free body of this object. And now suppose if you are drawing the free body diagram of the other object, then again you draw the applied forces first, mg, there is no other applied force, and the reaction force, And now basically if you see that relative to this object, this object tends to move this way, because at some point of time, if f is large enough, this object will start to move. I mean, if you assume that. So basically, in which direction there is a possibility of relative motion, friction acts opposite to that direction. And if you see, so in this surface, if you see this object, so if this object is tending to move this way, then compared to this object has a tendency to move in this direction compared to this object, I'm saying. Okay, so for that's why on this surface the reaction for the frictional force would be in this direction. So they both are of same magnitude here, because both are depends actually mu s into r or mu k into r. I mean the maximum force. If the maximum force is not there, then that equals to the f, because up to certain point f cannot pull it. I mean, I'm going into too deep, because we can discuss these things when we are teaching friction, when we are learning friction. So basically what I'm saying is, I mean, so you have to always consider in which direction the object moves on that particular surface. I mean, compared to the other surface, basically. I mean, compared to the other object. And in this plane, so as you can see that basically because of the force here, and if this kind of this force might be sufficient enough to drag both objects in this direction, and there is no way that this object is tending to move in this direction. So the only way possible for this object to move on this surface is along this direction. So that's why the ground on the ground surface the frictional force would be like, let's give it a different name. So this is F1 and this is F2. So likewise you draw the free body diagrams and then you solve for it. So if there is unbalanced force in any direction, then there will be acceleration, or if there is no unbalanced force, then there is no acceleration. So what I mean is, suppose you consider this one, then F minus F1 is equal to mass of the object into acceleration, but the acceleration is only greater than non-zero if F is greater than F1 max. So which is equal to mu r. I mean, if you already know about it, basically mu s into r, the static friction on that surface between those two surfaces, and times the reaction force. So if f is less than this f1 max, then the object will still tend to move in this direction, but there is no actual movement. So that you have to always remember. So yeah, so depending on this condition, this equation will be either 0 or m into a. So likewise you can solve this kind of free body diagrams, but always remember these two things, that always draw the applied forces first when you are drawing a free body diagram, and then only draw the resistive forces. Okay, so let's move on to frame of reference. That is again another important concept. So frame of reference basically is a place or in real world where from an object is observed. So it can be any point, I mean, in the real world. It can be any object, any place, or that anything that occupies space in the world can be a frame of reference. So basically, whenever there is a frame of reference, we mean that we have placed a coordinate system onto that frame, and a coordinate system contains an origin, if you know, and depending on the dimension of that place, like if it is a 2D system, then you can only draw 2 axes, or if it is a 3D system, then you can draw 3 axes like x, y, and z. So basically a frame of reference can be any object, and we usually place a coordinate like a coordinate axis onto that frame, so that we can observe from that with respect to that coordinate system. So we are always place a coordinate system on any frame of reference. Again, so if a frame, if this frame, suppose this is basically consider this is a bus. if this frame, suppose this is a bus, and this bus we have just placed, this point can be anything, this point can be placed anywhere inside the bus, but that point has to be attached to the bus. So otherwise if the bus moves and that point doesn't, then that is not the frame of reference of the bus. So if we mean that the frame of reference of the bus, then obviously the coordinate system has to be placed on the bus at all points, at all times. So this frame of reference is moving with the bus basically. So if this frame of reference, again, this frame of reference can, I mean, you can term the bus as the frame of reference, or for simplification, you can consider this coordinate system. If both are moving with a constant velocity, not both, I mean both has to move with the same velocity. So if they are moving with a constant velocity, then it is an inertial object, as you have said, as we have said before, and that's why the frame of reference is called an inertial frame of reference. Okay, and so if it is moving with velocity equal to constant, and if the velocity is not constant, so if the velocity of that frame is not constant, so if either magnitude or direction or both changes, then the frame of reference is called a non-inertial frame of reference. Okay, so basically whenever this frame has an acceleration, then it is non-inertial frame of reference. So whenever the bus accelerates, suppose from acceleration or braking is basically synonymous, because braking is basically negative acceleration. So we are not going to say them differently. So basically whenever you see there is a change of velocity, even if it is in the negative direction, like it is decreasing, or the direction is changing, in all cases wherever there is a change in velocity, we'll say that there is an acceleration present, rather than using different terms like acceleration or braking. So basically whenever the bus accelerates, we mean both, the bus can accelerate or brake. So whenever there is a acceleration, positive, negative, whatever, to the bus or to the frame of reference, then the frame of reference is called a non-inertial frame of reference. Okay, so I think it was clear up to this point. So if it is not, then you can send me your questions. So we, based on these concepts, I think this will be sufficient for us to understand what a pseudo force is. So this is one activity where, I mean, I prepared that we have to distinguish between inertial and non-inertial frames of references. So there are three scenarios. I think this should be very easy for you. So if a frame of reference is placed on a train that starts from a station, starts means like obviously if it is starting from zero velocity to some velocity, then there is a change in velocity, and you know when there is change in velocity, then there is acceleration, and when there is acceleration, then what kind of frame of reference this is. So you may write on your own. So you may write on your own what kind of, either inertial or non-inertial, you can put here. Then a person standing at a bus stop, if a frame of reference is based on that person, like that coordinate system, then I mean what kind of frame of reference that is, if he continues to be standing, not moving at all, so the velocity is constant. So you have to mention it. And then again, a car traveling in a circular track with constant speed. So let's draw this. So the car is moving on a circular track. So the velocity is, the speed is constant. So suppose 5 meters per second. And in a circular track, if the car is moving, then the velocity, direction of the velocity is always tangent to the track at that point. So if it is here, then the velocity is in this direction. So if a basically frame of reference is placed on this car, which is constant speed, but you have to determine whether the velocity is constant or not, because velocity is both magnitude and direction, it has to be constant. So if the velocity is constant, then you know what kind of frame of reference this is, and you have to write it down here again after seeing if the velocity is constant here or not. So yeah, so if you have any questions until now, you can send me your questions, and we can discuss more about it. So based on this, I mean, concepts, we will move to understand what is a pseudo force. Okay, so we will learn more about pseudo force now. Okay, so first let's begin with some conceptual questions that we will explore throughout this lecture. So basically the first question is who experiences, I mean, who experiences it? Basically like the person who feels it, the pseudo force. And another question is to whom it is applied to. So whenever we are drawing a free body diagram of any object, on in which objects we are going to apply the pseudo force, in which object we are going to draw the pseudo forces. And so basically this who experiences it, this category is a subset of basically this category. So all of them, all of the person who experiences it, the force is obviously applied on them as well, but and, but not all the force, not all of them who is it is applied to experiences the force. So who experiences it? A non-rigid object inside a non-inertial frame of reference. So when I said that, suppose there is a bus and there is a frame of reference placed on it, suppose at any point. So if there is an object, suppose you are there, suppose you are there, and suppose you are a non-rigid object inside the bus, and non-rigid object means that suppose you are not holding to the bus sufficiently, so that's why you are basically non-rigid. I'll explain more about what non-rigid means in the next slides. But for example, suppose, so just for example, the non-rigid object means you are not holding enough to the bus. So if the bus now moves with an acceleration, it has an acceleration in or braking or whatever, I mean, we will always term it as acceleration. So in whichever, so if this frame of reference has an acceleration, so then it is a non-inertial frame of reference. And if there is a non-rigid object inside that frame of reference, then that object will experience the pseudo forces. So this object, if it is non-rigid, then it will experience the pseudo forces, the forces. So not only the forces are applied on it, but it will also experience, like when, I mean, whenever the bus brakes or accelerates, you tend to move inside the bus basically. So that invisible force is applied on. And to whom it is applied to in general, I mean, when we should be drawing this force, if at all we should be drawing it. So any object that is viewed from a non-inertial frame of reference. So suppose that again the bus, and that is moving with an acceleration a, and there is a frame of reference in it. Any object, so it may be the bus, it may be the window of the bus, the seats of the bus, or you who is non-rigidly attached. So these are rigidly attached to the bus basically. That's what I mean by rigid and non-rigid. So and it can be an object inside the bus, like a person who is non-rigidly attached, or a rigidly attached object to that frame of reference. It can be so all objects inside the bus as well as objects outside the bus. Suppose a person is moving in a bike, suppose a car is there outside. So whenever you are viewing those objects, any of the objects, all these objects from a non-inertial frame of reference, from this non-inertial frame of reference, then this force is applied on them. So whenever you want to draw the free body diagram of all these objects, of any of these objects, so if you want to free body diagram or draw the free body diagram of this, suppose window, then if the bus accelerates this way, we will learn in which direction the pseudo forces are, and you will understand better. But this pseudo force is also applied on this windows. Sometimes you see if the window is not very rigidly attached, especially in Indian buses, local buses, that it is very then it tends to move. I mean, it tends to shake, right? And that is actually because result of that kind of pseudo force, not only in this direction, but sometimes the bus experiences acceleration in this direction as well. I mean, what I mean is not only in this direction but in this direction as well, because sometimes because of the bumpers it experiences an acceleration in this direction as well. So so that's what I mean. So whenever there is a so basically, so it doesn't have to be actually a non-rigid object. It can be rigidly attached to the bus. So for all these objects, like if rigidly attached, so they are rigidly attached, so they are rigidly attached inside car, inside the bus. This is non-rigidly attached inside the bus, so these are NRIs. And this is uh, outside the bus. And again, so this is outside the bus, any object basically, it doesn't matter non-rigid or rigid. So for all these ones, all these objects, RI, it can be RI, it can be non-rigidly attached and inside the bus, or inside that non-inertial frame of reference, I mean. So it is inside, I means inside here. So and here I'm saying non-inertial frame of reference. It can be not rigidly attached to that non-inertial frame of reference, but it can be inside, or the object can be completely outside this non-rigid non-inertial frame of reference. So for all these objects, if they are viewed from this non-inertial frame of reference, if they are viewed from non-inertial reference, so you have to remember all of that. So if any object that is viewed from a non-inertial frame of reference, the pseudo forces has to be applied on its free body diagram. So for any object with respect to the non-inertial frame of reference, basically we need to draw pseudo forces. So if any object is viewed with respect to the non-inertial frame of reference, we have to draw the pseudo forces. And what other forces we'll also learn, and in which direction the pseudo force should be applied, we will also learn. But this is a basic concept that you must keep in mind. And who experiences the force? Who is non-rigidly attached inside the non-inertial frame of reference. Okay, so let's move to the main concept. So basically it is a pseudo force, or we should call it a pseudo applied force, because when we draw the free body diagram of an object that is viewed from a non-inertial frame of reference, then we have to, when we are drawing the free body diagram, we have to draw the applied forces first. So basically mg, then if there is another force that is applied, I mean, I'm assuming there is no other force that is being applied on you or that object. Suppose you are inside that bus and you are this object, so your mg is obviously this one, and there is no other force, nobody pushes you or anything like that, but there is pseudo force you feel whenever the bus accelerates. So the pseudo force and also the, I mean, we'll see this direction will also vary, but the thing is, whenever we are drawing the free body diagram with respect to the non-inertial frame of reference for any object, we need to draw the pseudo force. We need to draw the pseudo force on. We need to draw the pseudo force first, I mean, along with the applied forces. So that is the key concept that I'm trying to highlight. So always when you draw free body diagrams, first you have to draw the applied forces, and pseudo forces is one of them. So basically we should start better calling it pseudo applied force. So, and after we have drawn the applied forces, we can consider about the resistive forces as I showed you before. And because they may not be there. I mean, the pseudo forces. I mean, you will understand what I mean based on some example that we'll explore later. So first we are going to always draw the applied forces and then the resistive forces, and pseudo force is one of the applied forces. Okay. So let's now understand what this pseudo force is all about. So as we have already said that it's experienced by a non-rigid object. So it's experienced by an object which is inside a non-inertial frame of reference, but it is not attached rigidly to the frame, like you or a suitcase that you might have. Suppose you are not holding on to it, something like that. So then it is experienced by those objects. Why is it experienced? I mean, by experienced means they are actually affected by it. So if it is a non-rigid object, then I mean, he or she or it will experience the force. I mean, it will move because of it, basically. So that is the main point of discussion here. And as we have seen, showed that the pseudo force is basically applied to all objects that are not that are observed from that non-inertial frame of reference, but not all of them will experience because of their rigidity or because they are outside the object. So the objects who are outside or who are rigidly attached to that non-inertial frame of reference, they will not experience that pseudo force or not be affected by it, basically. Okay, so let's consider B is an object inside the car which is not rigidly attached. Or we are assuming basically it is inside the bus. Suppose A is the bus, instead of car, let's assume bus, and it is not rigidly attached. So it is not attached at all to the bus, suppose. Okay, so not rigidly attached. I mean, I'm assuming that it is completely separate from the bus. I mean, inside the bus, but completely separate. So it is hard to imagine this kind of scenario, but what we are assuming basically here in this surface, the frictional force is 0. So this is basically a smooth surface. Suppose you applied soap on it and you made it you made it very slippery. So so that the frictional forces are almost 0, basically tending to 0, you can say. Okay, so for that case, basically, as you can see that it is not only not rigidly attached, but also, I mean, it doesn't have anything. I mean, any forces in the surface that can make it steady, that can keep it steady. If somebody pushes it or pulls it, if a force is applied on it, basically in this direction. So frictional force is always applied along this direction, depending on the relative motion of this object on this surface. Okay. But here it is 0, so basically it's a null vector. Okay, so now what we mean, what again, I mean, I'm repeatedly saying not rigidly attached means that the maximum resistive forces, as we already discussed before, that all resistive forces has a maximum value. For example, reaction or friction, these all resistive forces has a maximum value, and these maximum forces between resistive forces between A and B are not sufficient to keep B attached to A at all possible situations. Okay, so there would be some forces, some applied forces. So basically, not rigidly attached means that F applied can be greater than F resistive. Okay. So no, at some point of time, the F applied can be greater than F resistive. I mean, that's what not rigidly attached means. For rigidly attached means that if you consider only rigidly attached, then it means that F applied is always less than or equal to F resistive. Okay, so that's what basically rigidly attached means. I mean, as long as possible, the F applied has to be less than or equal to F resistive. Okay. Okay, so let's move to the next concepts. So now suppose we assume that both A and B were at rest. I mean, at t equal to 0, suppose at some point of time, the bus was suppose standing at a station, bus stand, and then the bus accelerates, suppose. And because of this acceleration, so because B is not attached to the, I mean, what we have assumed that B is basically not attached to A at all. I mean, for simplicity we have assumed this so that we can understand this better. So suppose A accelerates, so so both were at 0, and suppose at t equal to, I mean, here we assume that there it was t equal to 0, right? So let's assume t equal to t1 equal to 0. So at t equal to 0, basically both were at rest, and now suppose A accelerates. So what happens? So because A is having an acceleration, A starts moving with a, just A moves, suppose at a time like t equal to t2, at a different time, A will have moved half ft square. I mean, ut plus half ft square, u was 0, so I'm not putting it. So s equal to half ft square, A has moved. So basically the center of mass of A has moved. So center of mass of A has moved by half ft square. Okay. But what happens here? I mean, this is not half ft square. I mean, suppose so basically, so now consider that, now consider B. So B, there is, if it is not attached to A, it will remain where it was. So it will feel that it is lagging behind with respect to A, right? So basically, if it is inside A, it, even though it didn't do anything, if A was having an acceleration of A in this direction, but B doesn't see that A is accelerating, B sees that it is moving backwards with an acceleration A, or F, we mentioned F, right? So or consider it, let's consider it A. So the acceleration is A, suppose. So that is the thing. I mean, so if it is not rigidly attached to A, then even though A moves forward, B doesn't, but the result affects B because B feels that it is moving backwards with respect to A, right? So if you want to draw a free body diagram with respect to A, because all this experience of B is with respect to A, right? Because if B was outside, then it would be feeling like it was just as there, right? So if it is observed, basically because it is observing itself from A with respect to A, right? It sees that somebody is dragging it in this direction, right? So that's why we draw mass m of B basically here, but acceleration remains same. So the Fp, the pseudo force on B is basically, there is a pseudo force on B which is applied in this direction if A is having an acceleration in this direction. Okay, so the pseudo force is applied in a direction opposite to the frame's acceleration. So the frame is having an acceleration of A. B is an object which is being viewed by that non-inertial frame of reference, being viewed from the non-inertial frame of reference. And whenever that is happening, then if we want to draw the free body diagram of B, like freeing the B from everything and observing it, just observing it, then we see that there is a pseudo force applied on B in this direction. And which direction is it? Opposite to the direction of the frame's acceleration. Okay. So and again, I mean, there will be other forces as well, like mg. So these two are applied forces, and then there will be reaction force. Yeah, I mean, if it is contactless, I mean, that's why it doesn't make any sense. It has to be contact full, because the mg will always drag it to the downward. So don't mind the gap, just assume that this surface is basically frictionless. So even though there are contact, there is reaction, but this surface there is no frictional force. So the frictional force should be in which direction? Can you imagine? Can you understand from the basic concepts? I mean, if there was any friction, it would be applied in this direction, because the body has a tendency to move in this direction. So the relative motion in this surface of this body is in this direction. So obviously the frictional force direction would be in this direction. But unfortunately here the frictional force is 0. So that's why B moves with an acceleration A equal to the frame's acceleration. But the magnitude of pseudo force is always going to be the acceleration of the non-inertial frame of reference times the mass of the object that is being viewed, that is of the B, right? So not necessarily B will always move, B will always experience an acceleration A, because if there is resistive forces, suppose friction, or let's consider something else. Suppose you are a person which is not rigidly attached. Now let's consider a real scenario. And suppose you are holding to the bus with respect to, suppose, the railings, and so this is basically suppose those kind of things which hangs from the top of the bus, and so there is something to hold on to, and there is a string attached. So basically when you are pulling that string, when you are thinking that when you are holding on to that string, then the string is trying to basically pull you, right? So the string basically tries to pull you in the direction, I mean, parallel to the string's shape. So if the string is like this, so then it, so if you draw the Fiber diagram on you, like that object that we are talking about, then you feel that something is pulling you up, if you can understand, because at some point if you pull it strong enough, at some point of time you will try going up, right? So obviously this force, because this is upwards, that's why you feel, I mean, so this why this tension is in this direction. Sometimes we confuse in which direction the tension is. So you have to imagine always in the from the perspective of the free body, that what would happen in certain extreme cases. And obviously because at some point of time you might go up, there is no chance that the force was acting on you downwards. So obviously the force is always acting on you upwards. And then obviously there is mg, and there is a pseudo force. So if you have m person g, then this pseudo force applied on it would be mp into a. So suppose that was the bus, and so this was mp times g, and the bus was having an acceleration a. So then you would feel the pseudo force in this direction, correct? So suppose again, let's assume that this surface is frictionless, so there is no friction between you and the bus, okay? But still, I mean, what happens is you still, so if the bus accelerates, then you would be like this, not like this. So you would be like not this, you would be like this, okay? So I mean, you can you can imagine such scenarios when you are in the bus. So basically the tension would be in this direction, okay? So the pseudo force is in this direction to you, but so that's what basically the pseudo force is trying to pull you back. So you feel that there is something, when the bus accelerates, you feel like going back. In the example that we saw earlier, in that example the bus was braking. So basically the acceleration of the pseudo force, like that for boy girl scenario, if you remember. So for the acceleration of the non-inertial frame was in this direction. So that's why we felt the force in this direction. So that's why the person moved forward. But if the frame accelerates, then you feel that there is something that is dragging you backward, and that's why the tension, the shape of the string would be like this, okay? So if you see, but again, I mean, there is some rigidity between you and the bus. I mean, you are not fully rigid, that's why you experience this oscillation, and again that oscillation can be explained later. But for now we are assuming that I mean, there is acceleration, and then you are just holding on to it. And what happens here, I mean, so but you don't go far enough back. I mean, ideally if there was an acceleration, you would continue moving back. So who is compensating? This must be something that is balancing this force, and this is this component of t. So t cos theta, suppose this is theta, so then this is t cos theta, that is actually helping you to balance out this pseudo force, okay? So that's what I meant by rigid and non-rigid objects. So for non-rigid objects, any object that is viewed from this non-inertial frame of reference, any object, the windows, the seats, anything. But what happens here, all of them experience this kind of pseudo force. I mean, their mass, so mass of the object times acceleration. But what happens, because of these objects are rigidly attached, so that there is enough friction, enough reaction force, all this, because there is enough opposing forces, enough resistive forces to this pseudo applied force, that helps these rigidly attached objects to remain rigid and they don't experience the force. But the non-rigidly attached forces like you or any other person or any suitcase, suppose that you have kept on the floor of the bus, if it is not rigidly attached, then it will experience the force, it will be affected by the force. Okay, so it is always recommended whenever you are in a non-inertial frame of reference inside, then you must hold on rigidly to that frame of reference as rigidly as possible. Okay, so that is basically the concept of it. So you understand, right? So for all these objects, whenever you draw the free body diagram, but you have to again remember, drawing the free body diagram, free body with respect to the non-inertial frame of reference, then there would be a pseudo force, where in which direction? Opposite to the frame's acceleration. So, and what is the magnitude of that force? The mass of the object that we are considering times the acceleration of the non-inertial frame of reference. Okay, so that would be the magnitude. But but you may not always experience this acceleration, because ultimately the acceleration that you experience is the resultant of these balanced forces. So if there are resistive forces, like for rigidly attached or semi-rigidly attached or non-rigidly attached objects, then there is sufficient or at least some kind of resistive forces. I mean, I'm terming them as R. They can be the tension on top of that string, or they can be the frictional forces. So all these forces kind of balance out some of your force. So again, in this direction, it would be like the free body, the equation would be MOA minus R equal to MO times the A actual, right? So this is what you are actually bothered by. I mean, and if the resistive forces are, maximum value of these resistive forces is sufficient to tackle this entire force, then you would feel no acceleration at all, which happens basically to the windows and the seats and the person who are very well seated with the inside the bus. And that's why people recommend you to wear car seat belts, so that you are more rigidly attached to that frame of reference, so that there is no movement at all. We are going to consider those kind of real life examples more in upcoming examples. So in another example, so suppose suppose the bus has moved from the bus stand long back, and then there is it is moving with a velocity v, and there is again a not rigidly attached object inside the bus, which basically is again, if it is moving with the bus, then it has a velocity v as well. So if it is, I mean, just consider, I mean, there is no force, so just the bus is moving with a velocity. Okay, so when you experience that the bus is simply moving with a velocity and it is not braking or accelerating, then even if you are standing on the inside the bus, you just continue moving with the bus, right? I mean, you don't feel any relative motion with respect to the bus. So whenever the bus is moving with a constant velocity, you have to imagine all kinds of scenarios in your mindset. So so you are also moving with a constant velocity, and we are both moving with even though it is not rigidly attached, but there is no forces, I mean, to drag it. So so to basically make any kind of changes. So now suppose A breaks at some time t1. Okay, and because there is no friction here, so basically even though there is reaction force, I mean, that's what we assumed a little while back, even though there is reaction, so it doesn't move in this direction, but there is no friction to keep it rigidly attached. So if A breaks, braking means it has an acceleration in this direction. So what will happen? So I mean, to visualize it, basically A is braking, so that means that in a time interval t2 minus t1, A will move v t2 minus t1 plus half A t2 minus t1 square, right? And how much B will move? Because there is no force on B, there is no braking on B, so B will continue to move with v velocity, right? So B will have so S of S of A, I'll say, is this, and S of B is basically v into t2 minus t1. I'm assuming ideal situation where there is no friction, no stopping force, as we said before, no resistive forces on B. So in ideal cases, B will move by this much. Sorry, so the bus will move, this will be minus because this is braking, so So negative acceleration basically. So B will move more than A by this much, but B didn't do anything. B was continuously moving with, I mean, the same velocity. There was no fault. B had no fault, like that guy in the bus. I mean, who was not holding to the bus rigidly enough, basically. So that's why when the bus broke, applied a brake, then he continued to move forward. That person inside the bus. Why? Because he travels more than the bus inside that frame of reference. So with respect to all the rigid objects inside A, B moves more, right? So that's why, I mean, how did it happen? I mean, because B experience is pseudo force. So if you again want to free B, then in which direction the pseudo force would be? Opposite to the frame's acceleration. So mb times A. Okay. And again, there is no friction. So that's why, I mean, in this case, ideally, if there is friction on you, or you are suppose holding on to the holding on to the railings, I mean, holding on to this, holding on to the bus by means of the strings, then the component of T, so T will always be in this direction. You remember that, right? Because it is pulling you. So okay. So basically, if you draw the free body diagram of this object, then it will be, then the T will be in this direction of the ceiling, the free body of the ceiling. But for your free body, the ceiling is pulling you back. I mean, pulling you up. That's why at some point of time, if the pulling force is long enough, you tend to move upwards. So T cos theta will basically, so this is, which one is theta? So let's consider this is theta. So T cos theta will balance out the pseudo force that is applied on you, m% times A. So it is not necessary that B experiences acceleration A, as I told you, because there will be a resultant acceleration. So MP, which will be MP times A, but the magnitude of pseudo force will always be the mass of the object times the acceleration of the frame. Okay. So MP, this one minus T cos theta. Again, you have to see. I mean, in mostly the string, if it is string is weak, then it has a breaking force. Then this force has a maximum value. This resistive force, right? As I said, all resistive forces has a maximum value. So this resistive force will also have a maximum value of T if the string is not very strong. So in that cases, you might be able to move forward along with this string in your hand. But in most cases, they offer you a good string, so you don't move forward. So that's why this is 0, or otherwise it may even be MP times A actual. Okay. So basically, ultimately A actual can be different than what the actual acceleration of the frame is. But in ideal cases, it would be equal to the acceleration. So if there is no opposing force, so for example, on this case, if you draw the free body diagram of this body, then there is mg, there is reaction force, but there is nothing opposing mb equal to mb times A. So mb times A minus 0 equal to mb times A actual. So in that ideal case, the unfortunate B will have an acceleration. A actual would be equal to acceleration of the frame, right? But obviously it will be in the opposite direction because you are seeing it from the frame of reference. So it is important to know that whenever the object is being viewed from the non-inertial frame of reference, you have to draw a pseudo force in its free body diagram. Okay, it is as simple as that. So whenever there is an any object viewed from non-inertial frame, then you have to draw a pseudo applied force opposite to the frame's acceleration. Okay. So basically, okay, so that is, so all the forces will remain same on the same free body diagram, but if it is being viewed from this non-inertial frame of reference, then this object will have this pseudo force drawn. But whether he or she will experience it, that depends on whether it is inside the frame of reference and whether it is, so whether we will experience it or not, that depends on whether it is inside or it is outside. In inside you have two cases, rigidly attached or not rigidly attached. I think you already know which cases it will experience and which case it is not. So for rigidly attached, the object will not experience because the opposing forces or resistive forces not experienced, right? So opposing forces are sufficient to encounter this, to counter this applied force or pseudo applied force. But a non-rigidly attached object, the resistive forces are not sufficient, so they will experience the pseudo forces. So if you are a non-rigid object inside that non-inertial frame of reference, you have to be very careful by making yourself rigid or some other measures that we are going to talk about it. And outside, so if an object is outside, then again he has no chance of experiencing this pseudo force. But if you are viewing that object, so with respect to a non-inertial frame of reference, you have to draw a pseudo force opposite to the frame's acceleration on that object as well. Okay, so these are the basic concepts that you have to remember. So the only object who is at risk from this pseudo force is this non-rigid object inside a non-inertial frame of reference. Okay, and if you are that non-rigid object in that non-inertial frame of reference, you have to be very careful by making yourself rigid or some other measures that we're going to talk about. Okay, so just summarize that pseudo force is always applied in a direction opposite to the frame's acceleration. So if the frame is having an acceleration, so if A is a non-inertial frame of reference, then if and it is having an acceleration A in this direction, then the pseudo force will be opposite to the frame's acceleration. So to summarize, basically the direction, you all know that direction is given by the unit vector, right? It will be opposite to the acceleration of the frame. So unit vector has no units, so that's why you can write this kind of, so it has no dimension also, so the dimension is 1, so that's why you can draw this kind of identities. Okay, so whenever you multiply it by the magnitude of the force, it has a magnitude and a dimension. So multiply by the magnitude of the force, then you have to multiply by the magnitude of m into a. You understand, right? To balance it. But for unit vector, you can compare only the unit vectors regardless of the vector quantities, because this is only giving you the direction, only the direction, nothing else. Okay, if there is a hat, there is only direction. Okay, so that is it for the pseudo force direction. I mean, I hope that you understood what it is. So now let's see some life critical preparedness in such scenarios. We have already seen that how a pseudo force can be problematic. There can be cases like where it can be not only embarrassing but also it is going to be but also it can even be more threatening. Like for example, when you are in a car and suppose the car is having an accident, suppose it hits a tree, so what happens there? Can you all feel, I mean, can you all understand what is happening here? Suppose it is moving with a velocity 60 meters per second and it hits a tree. So basically in very t equal to suppose very less, like 0.01 second, the velocity becomes 60 meters per second to 0, right? V becomes, so there is a huge acceleration there. It is about 60 by 0.01, that much meter per second square. So there is a huge acceleration, right? And in which direction the acceleration is? In this direction, right? Because it is braking basically. So that's why all non-rigid objects, like for example you, will feel if some force is dragging you this way. So if there is no preparedness like this seat belt or these airbags, then you will feel a heavy force that is dragging you forward. And the force magnitude is your mass times the acceleration of the frame. So there must be something that needs to be absorbed. The force has to be absorbed, or force needs to be balanced, right? So basically these kind of the tension in this seat belt or this smooth airbags, they help you to cancel out the force or absorb the force, and they help you to not hit hard with this force, onto the strong objects inside the car, which can cause the injuries to you in an acceleration. I mean, in such cases. So basically, this is one kind of preparedness in life critical situations. And in daily situations, as I have multiple times discussed, that pseudo force is only experienced by the non-rigid objects. So increase rigidity with the frame as much as possible, and at the same time, so that is in daily situations it should be like this. And so basically increase your contact with the frame as much as possible. Okay. And if you cannot get any option, anything to hold on to or something like that, suppose you are traveling in a metro and you did not get any place, you are just standing by yourself. So what you have to do, you have to anticipate in which direction you are going to feel the pseudo force. So suppose if the metro is about to stop in a station, so then obviously it's going to brake. So the acceleration of the frame would be in this direction, so you are supposed to be feeling the pseudo force in this direction. So in that case, what you have to do, you have to incline your weight in this direction. Okay. So something like that. So if it is braking, then you can you're basically inclining your weight to the opposite direction. You can check it out yourself. Inclining your weight in this direction actually will help you to to tackle the force. So always you have to anticipate in which direction. Suppose if the train is starting from a station, then the acceleration is in this direction, so the pseudo force would be in this direction on you. So you have to be prepared by inclining your weight to this in this direction. Basically, there is multiple ways. You have to explore it by yourself. Okay. So so basically in that way, that is another way you can I mean, or basically I would recommend you to stand like this. Okay. And then in whichever direction, suppose you are experiencing anticipating the pseudo force to be in this direction, then you try to put more weight on your this leg. Okay. And also, so try to have like legs separated like this, and if the pseudo force is in this direction, then you put more force on this direction and see if it helps, and tell me back. Okay. Okay, so there is activity 2. I mean, again, it is we have discussed this multiple times. A bus is moving in the direction of nearing a bus stop. As a passenger, would you be expecting a pseudo force? So if it is nearing a bus stop, it is more likely to brake. So the acceleration is in this direction. And if you are a passenger inside, then in which direction you will be anticipating the pseudo force? You have to draw the direction of the pseudo force in this direction or this direction. Use the previous concepts, then indicate the most likely direction. Okay. And then as I said, so you are not tall enough. Again, I said that, or you did not get on those hand holders. So as a passenger inside the bus, you are likely to experience a pseudo force in the direction shown. Find the possible ways that you may remain prepared and enact one of them. Like as I said before, how you can incline your weight to the opposite direction of the pseudo force and encounter the problem. Okay, so counter the problem. So you can try out all these things. So the most important thing about physics is the more you experience in real life and try to correlate your learnings with them. So basically understanding the concept more, then it will help you to clarify your concepts, and you can apply your concepts better in the problem. So if you have the basics in physics, there is no problem that you cannot solve. And always try to solve all the problems from the basics and nothing else. Okay, so I would never recommend you to apply the tricks from the very beginning. So only after you know how to solve the problems from basic concepts and definitions. Always focus on the concepts. Okay, so if nobody is giving you the concepts, only tricks, then either you try to understand them by yourself, or you may consider some other options. because tricks are not helping you to learn physics. Okay, so if you understand the concepts, then try to solve the concept, try to solve the problem step by step by the concepts. Like for any problem in Newton's laws of motion or in any mechanics problem, there is only basic rules, basic concepts. First thing is you have to free the body. Okay, free the body, draw the free body diagram, apply, draw all the forces. Pardon my drawing because this has to be completely perpendicular to the surface. Draw all the forces, whatever is there. Okay, and then you just if all of them are not clear in opposite, I mean like perpendicular directions, you have to resolve them into perpendicular components. Sometimes, like I said, that the tree, right, t is in this direction. So for your advantage, whenever you are resolving into components along x and y, then you are making all these quantity scalar quantity, because you can handle all these components in this direction just by adding or subtracting. So you can write simple equations along x and simple equations along y, like we already did multiple times, mb into g minus f, something like that. And in all directions it is all about f equal to ma. So basic concepts, right? So and then you try to solve the equations and the problem will be there. I mean, and just simple mathematical ideas that you have to bring in. And when you understand when you learn to solve the problems from the basics, then you go for the tricks, but always understand why the trick is working, because otherwise you may end up applying a different trick for a different problem, and that would be like fatal for you. So not only you will get +3, but you will get, I mean, you are not going to get +3, but you are going to get -1, and that's -4 basically. So for the problem that you know well, I mean, that's deadly basically. -4 is deadly in your JE mains, or in WBJE also. I think there is 1 and -1/3. So these marks can be deadly. I mean, I can give you an example, like in our cases when I was studying, so 140 would give you some kind of rank of 500, and a score of 140, and a score of 120 would give you something like 3000. Okay, so and that is basically a huge difference if you consider at getting admitted. For example, consider my case. I mean, my IIT was a blunder. I will discuss more about it so that you can learn from my experience. So I ranked 8064 in IIT JEE. I scored 199 in the exam. I mean, in our format. I was expecting to be scoring about 280, and that would give me a rank of around 2000 when we were giving the exams. But these kind of things, I mean, or even like less than 2000. So I was expecting this rank and I ended up having this rank and no admission into IIT. Okay, so always that's why it is important to take things seriously. I mean, work hard on it. There is no harm in working hard. So work on each concept for each problem from each chapter. And if you have the concepts, I mean, actually, if you only have the concepts, I mean, I can help you have the concepts, and then no problem would be difficult for you. Okay, so then we'll learn some free body diagram inside a non-inertial frame of reference. As I already repeatedly said, that everything else remains the same. Everything else remains the same. If there is a tension, you draw everything, resolve it into components. And if it is a non-inertial, everything else remains the same. But you draw it after you know what direction the force is, because this is a resistive force. So the pseudo applied force, I'm assuming that it is in this direction. So you apply all these forces, but along with it, you have to draw the pseudo force as an applied force. So first you have to draw the applied forces, which are mg, then fp. And now after you have drawn the applied forces, then you draw the resistive forces, which are basically the friction. The T also acts as a resistive force here basically, but it can be applied force as well. I mean, here it is helping you to resist some of the forces. So I mean, it can be treated kind of both. I mean, what I would say. Sometimes this can be applied force as well, because I mean, because of this force you tend to move up. So yeah, but here it is acting as a resistive force as well. So you have to keep that in mind. So once after you have drawn all the forces, after that you draw the resistive forces like friction, reaction, and T also you can draw whatever. So after you have drawn all the forces, then you resolve it. So after you have drawn, not all the forces are in along X or along Y. So you have to set your two preferred coordinates, perpendicular components along which you want to resolve the forces or vectors. It can be like this also, X or Y. It completely depends on you. But here, as most of the forces are along X or Y, so it is better to take X or Y along these two directions, and then resolve whichever forces are not along these directions, because you cannot do anything until you resolve them into any of these directions. So you resolve them. So there will be R and T cos theta if it is theta, and this is T sin theta. So then you write down the force equations. So like mg minus R minus T cos theta equal to 0. I think, I mean, I mean, you have to see what it is. If it is moving, then it is obviously not 0. I mean, if it is tending to move or having a, I mean, non-zero acceleration, and in this case is also fp. So basically it is m into a actual. So if a actual is 0, then it is 0, and fp minus f plus t sine theta equal to again m into a actual. If this is my x-axis and this is my y-axis, then this is a actual along x direction, and this is my a actual along y direction. And see which all the values are given. Just put them or find them and try to solve for the unknowns. That's it. Always on activity 3, I thought that we should solve the problems 40, 41, 42 of H.C. Verma, part 1, chapter 5, Newton's laws of motion. So that is kind of home task for you. I'm not going to solve them for you, but based on the previous concepts, I'm pretty much sure that you can solve all 3 problems. So I'll try to give you some keys about it. So a block that is placed on this inclined plane. So find out the time taken by the block to slide down to the incline if it is reached from the top of incline. So first you draw the free body diagram. So first thing is to understand, I mean, yeah, first you try to understand if there is any pseudo force, where the pseudo force is applied, and who experiences it or no, I mean, to whom it is applied to. You only have to consider who is applied to. Not only, you don't have to think about who experiences it at all. You have to draw the pseudo force to all objects, whichever is being viewed from the non-inertial frame of reference, if you remember, right? So you have to just think that if this object is being viewed from the non-inertial frame of reference, and then yeah, then I mean, draw the free body diagram. I mean, some of it I might help you to draw. mg, then this is a frictionless surface, so there is no friction at all. And what other force is there? If there is pseudo force, then you have to draw the pseudo force. The reaction force, pseudo force, you have to draw in which direction it is applying. If there is any acceleration or not, then only there will be pseudo forces. So I'm not drawing you the pseudo force. So there are some tasks left. So then draw the free body diagram. So you have to complete this. So this is not complete yet. So basically try to do it, and then based on your other formulas and other definitions, you have to know which one you should apply. So if so it is going to be sliding down from the top of the incline from here to here. There is the length given, so you have to know that which equation you should be applying here. I think it's most likely going to be s equal to half ft square, right? So you have to understand what is the acceleration, in this direction, because it is going to be covering this distance, how much distance it is, L distance, with how much acceleration, that you have to find out. Okay, so basically R is balancing out, mg is this component. So if this is theta, is this theta? So so these are the basic mathematical things, because this is 90 minus theta, so this is theta, so this is mg cos theta. So R is balancing your mg cos theta, right? But mg sin theta, is there any pseudo force that is kind of imbalancing it or something like that, or any component of the pseudo force that you have to think? So in other, if there is not, then only mg sine theta is trying to pull it this way. So the equation, so in this case we are going to, that's what I mean, we have to know in which directions we are going to place our x and y axis on. So this will be our x axis, this will be our y axis. So mg sine theta minus, if there is any other forces, friction or anything else, then it would be equal to a ma. If there is no other force, then a will be equal to g sine theta. And then, so basically, or a, I should put it a. So, and then based on this, if s is given, then based on this you have to solve for t. Okay, so first just draw the free body diagram and then solve for the problem. And after you got the acceleration value, then you have to apply the other concepts as well. I mean, from other chapters that we are going to discuss in during the lectures. Okay, so second one is car is speeding up on a horizontal road. So there is basically a step 0 that we missed. So we basically a step 0 in the previous one, that if the drawing is not given, like for previous one drawing was given, so draw the diagram. So this is not a free body diagram, but it helps you to clarify what it is, what is there. Very simple diagram you have to draw, like a car is speeding up on the road with an acceleration a. A ball is suspended from the ceiling of the string and in maintaining a constant angle. So if again you have to consider the correct angles and all these things, because this is moving with an acceleration a, so this object is not rigidly attached to the car, and so the obviously in the car's frame, with respect to the car's frame, so in which direction it is going to feel the pseudo force. Pseudo force is felt by all, I mean not felt by should be applied. So if you want to draw the free body diagram of the ball, then first apply the applied forces. So T here kind of, I mean, acts as both, but here we are going to use it more kind of a resistive force, because it is going to help you to resist the pseudo forces. Okay, so if A is in this direction, then the directional pseudo force is obviously going to be m of the ball times pseudo force, but times the acceleration of the frame, but it will be felt in the direction opposite to the frame's acceleration, if you remember the earlier equation. Okay, so that is one of the forces we have already drawn. And then the other force, so now you understand, right, like what kind of incline the ball is going to make. So it is obviously, if there is a force that is pulling it in this way, then obviously it will be trying to move this way. And the tension, again, it will be drawing upstairs. I mean, if you only consider the ball, so freeing the ball from the ceiling, but with the tension. So free body means basically free the body with all the forces that were acting on it. Okay, so this is your T and this is your mg. So this is step 0. So here also you might draw this. I mean, if you cannot understand in which direction the ball, the inclination of the string would be, then you don't draw it here. But while drawing free body diagram, you can draw it. There is no rule. You make your own rules. I mean, it is all about, so there is no step jump or something like that. I mean, it is all about drawing the free body diagram correctly. Okay. So yeah, and then if all the forces are not along x and y, find most suitable, then step actually there is 2.5. I mean, I missed some steps here. So place x and y axis suitably. So suitably means in which direction your problem is basically relying on, or in which direction uh, so the problem is going into. So in which direction most of the outcomes are dependent on, or it helps you, so the problem is basically simplified. So in this case, you see that two forces are acting along x and y. So maybe we'll take this one and this one as the x and y axis, because x and y can be any direction. So you can basically keep it T also in this direction, and this is the y. In that case, you have to resolve ma and mg in these directions. You understand my point, I think. So this is the incline. So this is basically the free body diagram that you have drawn. And then you have to so if this is theta, then this is 90 minus theta, right? You understand, I hope. And this is again theta, because this is the this angle. So if this is t, then this will be t cos theta, this will be t sin theta. and again because the ball is being remaining steady here, right? So ball is not going to move because the tension is sufficient, the resistive forces are sufficient to help it overcome. And in this direction also there will be no movement because mg and t cos theta just balances out mg. So t cos theta equal to mg. I mean there may be some other things, I mean in the problem I'm not seeing them. I mean so you have to understand them by yourself. If there is something else, you tell me. If there is some other things that I'm missing. So if all these values are there, I think a is given. So a is basically a, mg not need to give. So m is basically m ball, and then you just have to find out the angle. So if t is not given, you can see that if you divide it, then you can say it like tangent of mb times a by mg times e. So this basically cancels out, and theta will be equal to tan inverse a by g, something like that. I mean but there may be some other things as well. I didn't read the problem, I mean only based on the on overview. I mean I think I'm going in the correct direction, but you have to tell me if I'm going in the correct direction. There is a second part of the problem as well, because so it is not hanged from the top of the car. So this second problem I'm expecting that you would be able to solve. So it is in the inclined plane, okay? But again you understand, right? So what is happening? So if the acceleration is in this direction, then it will be felt in this direction. But so that's why the inclination you have to draw it differently, because this acceleration will have a component in this direction, and there is no, it is a frictional surface, right? Smooth incline. So it will move in this direction, and mg's component is also in this direction. So there must be something. I mean mg will always be there, but this pseudo force can be in a different direction. So if the incline was in this direction and this was accelerating this direction, pseudo force would be in this direction. So if the ball was like this, then this is mg applied force, this is the pseudo force mb ma. So mg. So if you don't want to hear about this solving part, then you can actually move from this section if you want to solve it by yourself. So these are all the forces that are acting on no friction. So basically now as we see that I mean we have to solve the problem along this direction. So because so that there is no movement in this direction, so the forces has to be balanced in this direction. So that's why we are going to keep it like x-axis here and y-axis here, okay? And then resolve this along this. So pseudo force will have a component along this direction, along this and this, yes, you know, and mg will have an x component along this and this, because they will constitute this vector, right? They will constitute this vector by parallelogram law. So there is a lot of things to cover. I mean, if you are very beginner, then I mean, I definitely recommend you, I mean, to go through the other lectures. I mean, that I'll be starting, or just clarify the concepts by yourself. So mg sine theta, whatever helps you. So mg sine theta or cos theta, I mean, you have to see which angle it is and resolve it along these two components, and you have to ensure that there is no so it does not slip basically. So there is no force that, so basically mg sine theta is being balanced by this component of the pseudo force. So mg sine theta would be equal to ma cos theta or something like that. So then again tan theta you will get something like a by g or something like that, and then it depends, okay? So in that way you solve this problem. So first draw the free body diagram. Draw the diagram. If it is not there, then draw the free body diagram. Will there be any pseudo force? Draw the pseudo force direction, and then place two x and y axis suitably so that your problem is simplified. The more you practice, the more the problems will be easier for you, okay? So it is not a one-day thing like for me also, or one-time thing. The more you tackle these problems, the more you solve problems for all your materials. Whenever you encounter a chapter, you understand the concepts first. Always study a textbook thoroughly, not the materials, which has very simple. So physics is not that simple, okay? I mean, the way some materials present it to you, that physics must be very simple, and you tend to think that I mean, we always give more value to whatever is not being understood. So we think that others must be understanding it and I'm not. It is not like that. Okay, so if you are not able to understand, then the teacher is not being able to help you understand, or the material is not able to help you understand. So follow a material that is more suited to you. You can understand all concepts of physics. I mean, it's just depends on, I mean, how quickly you are going to catch it. I mean, it depends on obviously some of your intelligence and at the same time your tenacity. So I mean, either you, if you have only one, it is sufficient for you. Okay, so always try to understand the basics of a chapter by going through the entire chapter from a textbook, and then solve all the problems from that chapter. Okay, and try to understand the concepts by yourself. Okay, and obviously I'm going to help you in the lectures, but I mean, ultimately it's you who has to, I mean, deal with these problems more and more and more. Okay, so that is the thing. And then again, chapter 5, the problem, this is a bit tricky again. So here, another key that I'm going to give you, we have already discussed it before repeatedly, that draw the applied forces. Always have draw the applied forces and then the resistive forces, if any. So there may not be any resistive force at all. Okay, so so this is one of the key that you might help. And also one other thing that you have to consider. So pseudo force, you have to draw the pseudo force Fp or Fp whenever an object. So key 2 is basically pseudo force is in action when, only when the object is being viewed from a non-inertial frame. So I found this problem of Verma a bit ambiguous because it didn't mention, I mean, find the displacement of the block, I mean, with respect to what, basically, with respect to the elevator or with respect to somebody outside. So that's why, I mean, I divided. So that's why when you are solving this problem, you might find your answer a bit different than the Verma's. And that depends on where you are solving it from, with respect to a stationary person outside elevator. So basically a non-inertial frame of reference, or basically an inertial frame of reference, and or a non-inertial frame of reference. So accordingly the pseudo forces will be there or not, or, and again you have to compute the displacement with respect to the frame. So something like that. So solve these problems. I mean, I would say just go through the basic steps. So draw the free body diagram, draw the applied forces, then the resistive forces, and then try to have the equations. Okay, and then solve those equations, as simple as that. And if the problem is asking you more, like find the angle or the displacement or basically S, then you apply suitable formulas and all these things. And then, but the key is to find the acceleration from the free body diagram and the equations. Okay, so we'll end here. So yeah, if you find this lecture interesting and the way that I present you to it, so then I would strongly recommend you to enroll for my classes, which would be starting early June, and I think the first week of June. So the seats are actually limited. I'm going to take a maximum of 20 students from class 11 and maximum of 20 students from class 12. So enroll as quickly as possible, and see you in the lectures. So for more of this kind of interesting concepts and problem solving skills, I mean, that arise from the concepts. And obviously we'll learn some tricks, but we are going to learn them only when we have completely understood the concepts and can solve the problems from those concepts. Okay, so all the best. I wish you to see you in my lectures, or I mean, regardless, I mean, all the best for your studies. I sincerely hope that you will do the best. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. Yeah, bye bye, and see you soon.